If you were in class when I taught this lesson, then you would have done this problem as a warm-up. I'm going to go through the factoring problems very quickly. If you, this is not a lesson on factoring, so if you have questions about factoring, you need to go back and watch a video I made about factoring. So to factor this part A, we're going to end up with x. So we'll have x minus 5, x plus 3. Part B is the difference of two squares, so we have x plus 4 times x minus 4. Part C, the only way to get 2x squared is 2x times x. The only way to get 3 is 3 times 1. And in order for us to have this 5 as the part of that sum, the 3 is going to have to go here, the 1 is going to go here, this will have to be negative, this will have to be positive. So you can kind of reason through that. For this one, you're going to start by GCF factoring because we always start with that. So then this is simple to factor. We get x plus 3, x minus 2. This one is just GCF factoring. Okay, so factoring, we got to know how to factor to do today. What we're going to do in today's today's lesson, which is solving quadratic equations by factoring. So then I had this question, if a times b equals 0, what must be true about a or b? Well, in order to get 0 as a product, a has to equal 0 or b has to equal 0. And this is actually called the zero product property. And we are going to make use of that. That just says if a times b equals 0, then a equals 0 or b equals 0. Okay, pretty simple, you know that. So our lesson today is solving quadratic equations by factoring. So we've already talked about how we're going to factor this. Now notice on this has an equal sign and it's equal to 0, so that makes this an equation that we can solve. On the warm-up, there was no equal sign. There was no 0. This was not an equation. This was an expression. You can't solve an expression. We could factor it, but we couldn't solve it. Now we can solve it. But we start by factoring. So we factor this. We had x minus 3. No, we didn't. We had x minus 5 and x plus 3 equal to 0. Now, this is like having, so think of this times this. Think of this as the A and this is the B. So it's like having A times B equals 0, which we've said either A is 0 or B is 0. So either x minus 5 equals 0 or x plus 3 equals 0. Well, here we would add 5 to both sides. We get x equals 5. And here we get x equals negative 3. These are the solutions that if we substitute a 5 back in there, you will get 0. If you substitute a negative 3 back in here, you will get 0. By the way, if you graphed the related parabola, y equals x squared minus 2x minus 15, the related function, you would get x-intercepts of 5 and negative 3. So keep in mind how these things are related to the related function. Okay, in order to solve x squared minus 16 equals 0, we're going to factor, and we get x plus 4 times x minus 4. Zero product property tells us that x plus 4 equals 0, because remember this is times, or x minus 4 equals 0. So here we get x equals negative 4 and x equals 4. So we have two solutions, negative 4 and 4. Both of those, if you plug them in, you will get 0. Next one, we start by factoring. So remember on this one, whoops, going a little too fast. So we're going to have the 3 here, the 1 here. Okay, so we have 2x plus 1 equals 0. X minus 3 equals 0. So here you would subtract 1 and divide by 2. Here you would add 3. These are my solutions to this equation. Again, if you graphed the related parabola, y equals 2x squared minus 5x minus 3, and found the x-intercepts, you would find they were these. Here we factor out that 3 first. and then we factor. Okay, so now I'm ready to do the zero product property. Now I have another factor here. So you can think of this if you want, a times b times c equals 0. Then either a is 0, b is 0, or c is 0. One of them has to be 0. Well, you know 3 is not 0, right? It's 3. It can't ever be 0. It's a constant. So this doesn't matter for our problem, for solving it. Now, on this part, when you are asked to factor, it matters. It's part of your answer and it needs to be there. But now for solving the equation, it doesn't matter. So we've got x plus 3 equals 0, x minus 2 equals 0. So we get x equals negative 3 and x equals 2. These are my two solutions. Here we're going to factor out our 2x, and we have x minus 3. Again, if you want, you can think of this, like 3 separate factors. But remember, the 2 doesn't matter because it's not ever 0. But we get x equals 0 because that's a possibility, or x minus 3 equals 0. That one's done. And here we get x equals 3. So these are my two solutions. And again, if I graphed y equals 2x squared minus 6x, I would find that these were the x-intercepts. And on a problem like this, it's not equal to 0. Make it equal to 0. So we're going to subtract 4 first. So we get x squared minus x minus 12 equals 0. Then we're going to factor. And this is a minus 4 and a plus 3. So I get x minus 4 equals 0. X plus 3 equals 0. So x equals 4. X equals negative 3. Now, sometimes quadratic equations can't be factored, or quadratic functions can't be, or expressions, can't be factored. And you remember that when we were factoring, sometimes they couldn't be factored. That does not mean there's no solution to an equation. There are some just can't be factored, but they still have solutions. And we're going to learn other techniques later. Right now, the ones we can do can be factored, but we'll deal with those that can't later.